Gojo versus Yami was one of the most popular subjects to talk about online when it came to power scaling all the way back in 2021 and 2022. There are a few things that are funny about that debate, especially back then, how they were both anime senseis that were viewed as overpowered by the fandoms, and both of them were out of commission. Gojo was sealed in prison realm, whereas Yami was sealed inside of this coffin, acting as a battery for the Tree of Cliff-Off. And now, both have come back, and both have gotten stronger, and we've learned more about their abilities. And then Gojo dies, and now Yami might be cooked as well. And also, what I think is the funniest part is that the main reason for why people thought Yami would win against Gojo was essentially all but confirmed to be true with the way that Gojo was defeated right before his life ended. But I want to go back and talk about this versus battle again for multiple reasons. Now, don't get me wrong, while I still don't think this is a close fight, both of these fighters have win conditions. Gojo can beat Yami, and Yami can beat Gojo. If they did fight a bunch of times, it would not be one character getting every single victory. It's just that one character would have a lot more wins than the other. I'm going to try and make this go as quickly as possible and not talk about things that have already been discussed ad nauseum. For example, I'm not going to be explaining in depth Gojo's abilities. Again, it's 2024, his abilities are not that complex. But if you enjoy Black Clover versus Jujutsu Kaisen discussions, hopefully you like this one, and let's get right into it. So the first thing I want to address won't even be mana versus curse energy, but just power and speed. Most people agree that Yami is way stronger than Gojo and way faster than Gojo, and that it just really all comes down to hacks and abilities. But there is not a small minority of people who try and argue that Gojo is stronger and faster than Yami. But no, if you lowball both characters, Yami is way stronger and faster. If you highball both characters, Yami is way stronger and faster. If you look at the lowballs Jujutsu Kaisen has for its attack potency, it really doesn't have a lot of impressive feats. If you do not use creation feats, their feats aren't even comparable to Chapter 2 Black Clover, when the byproduct of William's casual spell forms a large mountain level storm. But if you go with creation feats, you can argue that Dagon could be small country to country level for having enough energy to create an actual sea. Even if it's the smallest sea in the world, it would still be those levels. And Gojo scales so far above Dagon, but unquantifiably so. Whereas if we go to Black Clover, there are multiple multi-continental calculations that Yami would scale above. And then if we go back to the Fire Spirit Salamander, a villain from almost 300 chapters ago, the data book says it can vaporize an ocean, which is multi-continental, and we can easily chain scale Yami to be many thousands of times stronger than the Salamander's feat. I'm going to show a note of that scaling chain here with some of the images on the screen, because I don't want to read all of it out for the sake of brevity, but you can pause and read it for yourself. That scaling chain will get Yami anywhere from moon to small planetary, and that's leaving out a lot of power-ups and other feats and calculations as well. So if you lowball both characters, Yami is way stronger than Gojo. And you cannot take the energy values from Gojo's calculations and use the Black Flash power-up, because we're dealing with exponents here, and you cannot use them on variables unless we know the exact variables being used to quantify. Because, for example, the number that you would get from stacking the Black Flash on top of Gojo's energy values would vary depending on if you're using kilojoules or joules. 10 kilojoules equals 10,000 joules. So 10 kilojoules to the power of 2.5 is 316 kilojoules or 316,000 joules. But if we're using just joules, well, 10,000 joules to the 2.5 power is 10 billion joules, which means that because we do not know which quantification is being used, we cannot use this to stack on top of any calculations in JJK. Even the editor called out Gege for saying that using exponents was kind of stupid. And it actually does hurt Jujutsu Kaisen scaling, because it literally makes any of these calculations unusable. And again, if you want to try and highball Gojo to say that he's stronger than Yami, we'll do the same for Yami as well. People will scale Gojo above Yuki's black hole. Okay, well fine. Yami also creates black holes, and now he scales way above 80% Dante, who could create gravitational singularities. And he actually made them bigger than Yuki's black hole, as we can see that it's actually relative to the size of a mountain. And then also people say that Gojo's universal, because he scales above characters with infinite energy. Well, same thing for Yami. He scales to and above characters who have stated have infinite power. And also, you can argue that Yami's infinite power meta is even more supported because he split a universe in half, but I digress. If you want to know more about the universal Black Clover meta, you can check out this video. And if we want to get into the insane, absurd levels of wank, I have seen a lot of people say that Gojo's outerversal because his curse technique allows him to make the impossible possible. Geez, I guess that makes Reeve from the Elf arc outerversal because she can make the impossible possible. If we're going to try and make outerversal arguments I'll just say that Yami scales above Zagrid, and it's actually stated that his fight transcended time and space. Obviously, this is bad scaling for both sides, but sometimes you gotta fight wank with wank. And a lot of these same statements apply to speed. People will love to try and downplay Yami and say that he's slower than Patri, who was Lightspeed, and then they'll argue that he has not gotten any faster since then, which would be weird to argue that Yami has not gotten faster in 340 chapters. But anyways, that's a blatant lie. I'm going to put a note on screen showing a pretty basic narrative explanation that proves Yami got faster. But again, it's the same thing. If you lowball both characters, Yami way faster than Gojo. Because then you can say that Gojo's lowball is like lightning speed, whereas Yami is faster than light if we're going to downplay the crap out of them. If you want to say that Gojo's faster than light with the Kashimo calc, which isn't even for sure an electromagnetic wave attack, okay, well, Yami can fight Morgan. Morgan was fast enough to dodge Jack's slash, even though Jack's slash covered 415 kilometers before Morgan's first light attack traveled 80 meters, which would make Jack's slash attack over 5,000 times the speed of light, and Morgan dodged it. And Yami can fight Morgan. And of course, people will bring up the inaccessible speed Gojo arguments because he can move and stop time within the prison realm. Well, this is something that Black Clover has also done many times. Julius's time magic is time stop, yet we see multiple characters actually be able to move inside of it. And in the light novel, which is canon, Yami's Dimension Slash travels through one of these time stop orbs. And then in the current arc, we have some of the weakest characters, just literal randoms in the Clover Kingdom, being able to move inside of Neverland, where inside of Neverland, time is stopped. So again, no matter what way you want to slice it, lowball both of them, highball both of them, wank both of them, Yami is faster than Gojo. It really does all come down to abilities and hacks. These are the most important things in this battle. And with those things, it becomes important to discuss whether or not mana and curse energy would be able to interact. I'm going to be doing two scenarios in this versus battle. One where we say that they equalize, and one where we say they don't. So here are the similarities between negative mana and curse energy. And if regular mana can interact with negative mana, that would mean it's going to interact with curse energy as well. So we're going to start with doing verse equalization under standard battle assumption. So basically we're going to be equating the systems to start. Mana equals curse energy, spells equals curse technique. So in this scenario, we have Yami versus Gojo. Under standard battle assumptions, characters start usually at their most powerful. This means Gojo is going to have Infinity active and he will be serious. Same thing for Yami. He will have his Black Moon active. I don't think Yami is just going to start throwing punches at Gojo. People will always try and make that claim, and then they'll say they'll just get stuck in Infinity. But that's not how Yami starts fights. He usually starts fights with regular old slashes. And he'll probably just start off by seeing that these black slashes are just doing nothing to Infinity. They're getting stuck in them. Because inside of Gojo's Infinity, things get slowed down infinitely and they can never reach Gojo. Now, Gojo also has blue, red, and purple. Blue is pull, red is push, and the two of them combined make purple. Now, here's why I do not think any of these attacks are a problem for Yami. So, for one, the first thing is speed. Yami, as I already showed, is so many times faster than Gojo that these attacks are going to appear like they are moving at a snail's pace to him. They would never hit him. On top of that, Yami has Black Moon to protect himself with. If you are not familiar with mana zones or this ability in particular from Black Clover, think of Black Moon like a mixture between simple domain and domain amplification. Yami creates his mana zone, his own spatial territory, and infuses it with his black hole spell. This makes him way faster and stronger, but also nullifies both spells and magical energy itself. Basically, it is power nullification. So it would likely nullify any of these attacks by Gojo. And it does already nullify spatial attacks, as it works on Dante's gravity, gravity being the distortion of spacetime. It even protects him from the gravitational pull of Dante's singularity, and even back in the Elf arc, Yami created his black hole to just swallow up Longris's offensive spatial magic. This type of magic directly erases space. It is stated to be existence erasure in multiple sources, and even the databook states that what Longris's magic does is that it scrapes away the universe itself, something that would arguably be more powerful than Hollow Purple. And Yami's much weaker black hole can swallow up that offensive spatial magic like it's nothing. So that would mean that Black Moon is likely nullifying all of these abilities. They're not even going to touch Yami. There is the argument that Gojo has already resisted power nullification when it came to Jogo and Hanami's domain amplification. But I think that one of the big differences here is that Jogo and Hanami were far weaker than Gojo, which is why it didn't fully work. Whereas Sukuna, who's at least relative to Gojo, his amplification worked pretty easily. But Yami's Black Moon still nullifies magic that is resistant to power nullification. For example, in Black Clover, Mana Skin grants characters resistance to power nullification. We see this in the Elf arc, when Noelle uses Mana Skin to counteract Kavin's compass magic, which nullifies her power. Yet, Yami's Black Moon worked on Miraliona even though she had a Mana Zone active. And Mana Zone is just a more advanced, more powerful version of Mana Skin. That would mean that Yami's incomplete version of Black Moon has layered power nullification, meaning that Gojo can likely not resist it. This is why I don't think any of Gojo's powerful attacks would even reach Yami in the first place. They would be swallowed and nullified by Yami's own version of domain amplification. And it would be pretty arguable that if Yami just walked over to Gojo, the Black Moon would just completely nullify Gojo's infinity, while also directly attacking his cursed energy, weakening him, and letting Yami get the easy one-shot victory because he's so much stronger than him as well. We have also seen Gojo's infinity be nullified by different forms of power nullification, whether that be Toji's inverted Spear of Heaven, or the aforementioned domain amplification. But in reality, Yami probably wouldn't even need to get close, as he has Dark Cloak Dimension Slash, an ability that is just directly stated to cut space. It would basically be the equivalent of Sukuna's World Slash, which did this to Gojo. And sure, Gojo has Reverse Curse Technique, but it's just going to be the same outcome as to what Sukuna's Slash did. Furthermore, Yami has his own sure hit with the Mana Zone attack, the EI Slash, which lets him attack from anywhere within his Mana Zone, even inside of things. And it's even stated that the attack never misses. Now, you could argue that if it does travel, and it's not just directly attacking or spawning on the opponent, it would be stopped by infinity, but this also implies that Gojo is already inside of Black Moon, which means that Black Moon would be nullifying it. So a lot of people like to bring up that Gojo is a teleporter, though it's just directly stated that it's only on certain conditions that he can teleport, and really, teleporting is not as impressive as people make it out to be. Yami has already fought teleporters. Dante literally teleports, and he is way faster than Gojo, and he has less limits to his teleportation, yet it wasn't the teleportation that was an issue for Yami, it was the regeneration that he had. So in my opinion, Gojo's only win condition here is domain expansion. Because in inverse equalization, Yami's mana would equate to cursed energy, so he would be taken up by the domain's sure hit, which would hit him and fry his brain. I don't think Yami has any inherent resistances to the information of the Limitless. Again, this is a situation where I think Gojo can win if Yami gets too cocky and does not activate his Black Moon. So if Gojo does activate domain expansion and traps him inside of it, that would be a victory. That would just beat Yami. There's just no way around that. But Yami's Black Moon, if activated, is likely going to keep him protected here. If he has it active, then it's going to be like having a simple domain within Gojo's Unlimited Void, which means that the sure hits would get nullified when they try and pass into Yami's own spatial territory. From here, Yami could use Dimension Slash to either break the domain or kill Gojo. But if he does just break the domain first, that means for a short period of time, before Gojo has the time to restore his curse technique, Gojo would have no curse technique, meaning no infinity. So any of Yami's regular attacks could hit Gojo, and they'd be strong enough to essentially one-shot him. But don't forget, Gojo has potential to also counteract Dimension Slash. While it's not confirmed if Gojo has domain amplification, I'm going to give to him because, fuck it, he's the honored one. Domain amplification essentially nullifies the opponent's curse technique by transferring the curse technique into your own domain, which means that in theory, this technique could nullify the Dimension Slash. But Gojo would have to do this at a massive cost. That would mean he could not use his curse technique at this time. No infinity, because amplification requires you to not use your curse technique. This would mean regular attacks could now work on Gojo. Yami could use a mana bullet on Gojo, and so mana bullets are not spells or magic in Black Clover. They are just compressed energy, compressed mana that characters use. This is what they use before they get spells in Black Clover. Domain amplification doesn't nullify curse energy, it nullifies curse techniques. So this, in theory, would likely bypass amplification and be strong enough to beat Gojo. And also, Yami is just faster and stronger with his own regular statistics, and he is a master swordsman. He could go in there up close and just use regular attacks that aren't even magic based, and he would be able to defeat Gojo. There's another possible way for Gojo to intercept and negate Yami's Dimension Slash, and that would be Gojo's Lapse Blue. Blue is the spatial pulling, and it does act similarly to a black hole. And Dante's gravitational singularity was able to warp and distort Yami's Dimension Slash. This is certainly possible, but just because blue is spatial pulling and acts similar to a black hole does not make it in any way equivalent to Dante's singularity. Because the singularity isn't just sucking up space, it is sucking up things and erasing them. Besides, Dimension Slash has already worked on other types of spatial powers. Remember that Longress's magic is literally scraping out the universe and erasing space. Which do you think is more powerful when it comes to spatial manipulation? Erasing space or pulling on it? We do see that when things are at the center of blue, they are not erased. Instead, they are pulled into it and basically imploded. If Yami's Dimension Slash can slice through spatial magic that is literally ripping out the universe, I don't think blue is going to work. But even if we want to say that it does, here's why that doesn't matter. This will actually answer two different questions at once. One would be, why doesn't blue work? And the other is that people try to argue that Gojo will just dodge Dimension Slash because it is slow. The whole idea that Dimension Slash is slow basically stems from the anime. When I say that the anime makes Dimension Slash seem slow, it's because of the cinematic timing, and there are a few times in the anime when Yami uses it that it feels slow. But if we go by the same logic, I could just as easily say that Hollow Purple is slow because of how long it took for Gojo to activate it against Hanami. Regardless, Dimension Slash is not slow. When Yami fights alongside Jack the Ripper, the two activate their spells at the same time. Yami activates Dimension Slash and Jack does his spell that is literally just him slashing, not some long drawn out pent up attack. Despite going at the same time, the two of them both launch their spells in the same instant, and not only that, but we actually see that Jack is closer to Longress, yet their attacks reach at the same time, meaning that Yami's Dimension Slash actually travels faster than Jack's Slash. Not only is Jack already at least FTL by this point of the series, but every single time he slashes, his blades get faster. So this is a Jack that already launches out dozens, maybe hundreds of slashes, and then he uses his most powerful one, and yet Yami is able to have the same casting speed as one of Jack's strikes and a faster attack. Also against Dante, he says he's launching a ultra high speed attack at Yami. The two of them are not really that far apart from the other, yet by the time Yami launches Dimension Slash and it hits the boulder, that ultra high speed boulder has actually barely moved between them, which shows the Dimension Slash is certainly not a slow attack. Because of the significant speed advantage Yami has against Gojo, not only is Gojo not going to be able to dodge Dimension Slash because it's too fast, he's also not likely casting blue nearly fast enough for him to have a chance at warping Dimension Slash. Not gonna lie, Yami doesn't even need his most powerful attack, Death Thrust. It's hard to say how many times out of 10 Yami would win, because most of the time he would just activate Black Moon pretty quickly. But honestly, yeah, there's gonna be occasions where he wouldn't. But also, he's so much faster than Gojo that there's chances he can dodge the domain before it even closes around him, and then he could destroy it from the outside. Because domains do have activation times. So while I think that Yami wins, I think Gojo could win probably one time out of 10, where he is able to get the domain up before Yami has Black Moon, and then just gets a victory right there. Yami, without protection, cannot go against the Unlimited Void. So as you can see, if we do verse equalization, it does not work out well for Gojo at all. Now what if we don't use verse equalization? That means that Black Moon might not automatically nullify the curse techniques. But that doesn't guarantee that it wouldn't work on curse energy, because Yami can use Black Moon to absorb physical things that are not magic. He did this in his fight against Zagreed, whose word magic could warp reality to make real physical things not made by magic. And also, verse equalization kind of balances for both characters, because that would mean that domain amplification would not work on Yami's abilities. And it also removes Gojo's only win condition, because the sure hits of domain expansions require cursed energy to target and to be brought inside the domain. This was a major plot point with Maki when she fought her cousin, where she won basically because her body that lacked cursed energy could not be tracked by Naoya's domain. Yami doesn't have cursed energy. And no, just because Yami has negative emotions doesn't mean we can give him cursed energy. Cursed energy is not a thing in Black Clover. By the same logic, we have to give Gojo magic, because in Black Clover, magic comes from the soul. And everybody has magic in Black Clover. And because everybody has a soul, everybody in Black Clover has magic except for a couple people because of very extreme circumstances like Asta and Ryu. In the same note, everybody in JJK has a soul. By that same logic, we'd have to give every single character in JJK magic power. Doesn't really make sense when you think about it both ways. So if Gojo's really only win condition is now removed from him, I just don't see how he wins, because you can argue that Black Moon would still work on the Hollow Purple because it's still spatial manipulation, even without the power nullification, and it probably just could overpower Gojo's Infinity abilities, except for the Infinity itself. Regardless, Yami still has Dimension Slash, which cuts both magical and physical space, and because it would be like the World Slash still, it would cut through Infinity and defeat the Honored One. People often try and counteract Yami beating Gojo without verse equalization because they say that Yami could not see cursed energy, but this is kind of silly because in Black Clover it's actually stated that Asta cannot see mana, but he's able to perceive magic because of ki. In the Elf Saga, Asta could fight magic and counteract it with his eyes closed because he could perceive how the magic affected ki, how it affected the world. This is exactly how Toji and Maki see cursed energy and cursed spirits because they can see how they interact with the world. Yami, by the time of the Elf Saga, is better at ki than Asta, so that means that because Yami would be able to perceive cursed energy with ki and how it affects the world, he's not going to get caught off guard by any of Gojo's attacks. A lot of people argue it doesn't matter if you can just simply cut space, because you have to cut infinite space to defeat Gojo. This is something I just completely disagree with. This all stems from the special grade mathematician special, where the editor of JJK brought in these mathematicians and engineers to try and explain Gojo's abilities. And there were multiple translations of this, and one of them says that Gojo creates an infinite space. But another translation says that he makes an infinity space, which actually makes sense because his ability is spatial manipulation, and it's called Infinity. So it seems more like a name fallacy to me and a mistranslation. In one of the other translations, it says this would be possible in an infinite space, which is basically appealing to reality. It would be no different from saying that a character has infinite power because they can move at light speed, which requires infinite energy in our real world. Or the other translation says that this is possible in the infinity space, because that is Gojo's ability. It's a space that he makes with the technique called infinity. With these conflicting translations, and it never being stated in the manga or the anime that he creates an infinite space, but rather he creates infinitesimal distances based on the Achilles and the Tortoise paradox to make it seem infinite. That means that Yami's Dimension Slash would destroy the space itself and then hit and kill Gojo. And even if you want to argue that for whatever reason, Gojo's space is just infinity, deal with it. Yami's already destroyed an infinite space with Dimension Slash before. He did this when he destroyed Glamour World in episode 151. This is a canon episode. It is directly one of the episodes mentioned by the director of the anime that he worked with Tabata and his editor to make it. Dorothy's Glamour World is stated to be endless, and it's affirmed by Reeve. Lux says the dimension is endless, Magnus says that's impossible, Reeve says, here in Glamour World, the impossible is possible. People try and argue that this is not what it means, but this is the most likely interpretation. If I am stuck in a desert world, where there's no running water anywhere, and then I run into this random town in the middle of the desert, and I say, you guys have running water here? That's impossible. And then the mayor of Desertville comes in and says, but here in Desertville, the impossible is possible. That would be the mayor directly responding to me of my impossible claim and affirming it. Reeve is affirming Lux saying it's endless. So if you want to try and argue that infinity is an infinite space, Yami's already destroyed an infinite space with Dimension Slash. So while I think Gojo can beat Yami, it's certainly possible, Yami would win more times out of 10 by a lot, in my opinion. It could arguably be closer if you did equal stats, but yeah, that's my thoughts. That's how I interpret these things. But let me know if you think I got anything wrong, or if you completely disagree, or if you agree, let me know down below. I'm honestly kind of getting tired of JJK versus Black Clover matchups, because unfortunately, Black Clover is just a way more powerful verse that is still decently hacked out. I'm probably going to be doing one more in the near future. That'll be Asta versus Sukuna, because for whatever reason, people are now saying that Sukuna can beat Asta, but that'll be a fun one as well. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for the support. Leave a like, follow, you can join my Discord linked in the description below. Hope you guys all have an amazing day. Peace out.